Arianne Phillips, a four-time Oscar nominee, including this year for A Complete Unknown for her incredible costumes. Congratulations again on this Oscar nomination. The fourth. Does it feel any different after being a fourth nomination for you at all, or is it like everyone is obviously incredibly special? I'd imagine.
Thank you so much for that. It's beyond my wildest 8-year-old dreams. I have to say that this nomination resonates in a way that is similar to probably my first nomination, although I think I've been, my first two nominations were a really big surprise because they're character driven. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I was riding the wave of a wonderful, beloved film. But yeah, this actually resonates a lot because it's a year of great costumed movies and very vivid costume movies, big costume movies. So this is really a character piece, and it is with great like humility and excitement to be nominated. And it's really the greatest thing about being nominated is that it is really a nomination for my team, for Jim Mangold, for my community, my family, every person I've ever known. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about it. It's really not really just about me. Kind of the excitement extends beyond to my community of friends and family and all the great people that help us get to this point.
Yeah, it's an incredible film, obviously, and your work is so great. I want to ask you actually. So you're doing it's a like we said, like it's a biopic or whatever. It's not tech, I would say it's like different than a biopic, but obviously it's about like Bob Dylan, a real life figure. You work with all these figures, and we have like very like as people who you have reference points to the costumes they wore, what they're wearing in real life, like on stage at Newport Folk Fest or whatever it is. But then you also have to dress them in their private life, I guess, right, as well. And can you talk about like how you kind of built the like thought conceptualize that and thought of those costumes, like what does Bob Dylan look like when he's not Bob, when he's not Bob Dylan on stage, like what is he going to dress like? And that's something that's really great about this film because I think you really learn about him, but in terms of the costumes, like I think that's like a real testament to your work. So how'd you kind of like do that, I guess?
Well, really, it starts with permission from my director, Jim Mangold. Jim having this our sixth time working together. And when we did Walk the Line, and even like when we did 3:10 to Yuma, especially Walk the Line, and on this movie, it's, we're not making a documentary. We're telling a story, and we're capturing the essence of not just Bob Dylan, but of all our known characters, everyone from Pete Seeger to Alan Lomax, Joan Baez. So it's really that permission that Jim gives us, and from what I heard secondhand from Jim, Bob gave Jim that permission too when he was giving notes on the script. So that is very freeing, and having the trust of my director. And the benefit of working with Jim over the years has really helps that process and kind of releases me from the neuroses of being super exacting. Of course, authenticity is everything. So the first thing that I did is I did a storyboard basically of every single scene, and I put in I made these digital boards, and I put in all the known events that were photographed or filmed that we were recreating so that I could recreate that in the most authentic way. And then for the kind of blank spots of all the scenes that are kind of the cinematic version of the story, the pastiche of hearsay or beautiful scenes that Jim wrote, that was really about becoming, in my process, super immersed in the research.
Okay.
I had the good fortune of the many delays we had getting this film made so that it could kind of marinate and gestate, if you will, over time. And I could, usually when working on the film, it's like 0 to 60.
Right.
But because we had these delays, it actually helped me because it, it, um, it helped me really kind of, you know, zoom in on what rose to the top in terms of Bob Dylan's aesthetic. So looking at the breadth of Bob's career and all the photos we had access to, just understanding through looking at research what his aesthetic is. And then, of course, it is the balance of what's happening in the scene. A lot of those scenes are private moments, like him and Sylvie, or him alone writing music. So it's really the balance of the incredible cinematography, that how Faden, Papa Michael is going to light the scene, Jim's overall vision of what we were trying to convey in each scene, and what was the message, working with Timmy on what helped convey, because Timmy has a different physical body than Bob Dylan. So figuring out what that balance is and what really felt like our sweet spot. And of course, the beautiful context that Francois Odoui with production design created, that Bob's apartment was just filled with wonderful details. So having that foundation and that collaboration across departments really, really, really helped bring confidence to these private moments. And kind of, when we see him in public, he's mostly wearing a lot of outerwear, a lot of jackets, and being able to strip that away and create these more intimate private scenes. So it's really just becoming deeply immersed in the research, and having kind of um, a philosophical, I guess it sounds a little heady, but just having a bit of a through line with Bob's aesthetic.
And then I'm assuming then the answer to this would be yes, but like I'm sure that extends to all the other characters. Like you're saying, like I love the way Joan Monica Barbaro looks as Joan Baez. I think that's just incredible, and you recreate a lot of her famous looks too. But again, even like I love that when he goes. I guess it's her house in California. I love that outfit that she's in when he comes out
Oh
to see
yeah.
her. I love the jean, like the jeans are. It just is such a great look, and it's like so. It's really sticky. I guess a lot of these outfits I feel like are just like I remember them, like watching. You know what I mean? Like it's like I'm kind of could picture them in my head having or like I'm yeah after the movie. I guess I just think that's really a testament to your work. But I guess like in terms of
Thank
Joan,
you.
in
That's a
terms
huge
of like
compliment. Thank you so
no,
much. I mean, also, I'm of the age where I was a kid and I was born in the 60s. And I grew up in Northern California, and Joan Baez, Pete Seeger, it was just part of my world as a kid. We used to sing Pete Seeger songs in nursery school, and Joan Baez records and Bob Dylan records. So there is a kind of like sense memory for me, if you will, to use kind of an actor's term, in terms of like that Mexican sweater that Monica as Joan Baez wears at Carmel was really indicative of a time, and also was trying to show the dichotomy between or the difference between East and West Coast and what was happening at that time. And Joan really represented the West Coast in a great way.
I want to ask you too. Obviously, like in those scenes you have I guess so we have like in the movie like obviously the Newport Folk Fest is obviously such a big thing, but they're also at the Monterey Festival, and I guess like in terms of like dressing the I was thinking of this like in terms of the work dressing like the background actors and like thinking of the dichotomy like you were saying or the difference between like East Coast and West Coast, how like challenging was that to like make sure that the crowd looks right in the Monterey Folk Fest versus like the Newport Folk Fest, and even if it's only for a split second you kind of got to keep it up so like the viewer isn't like pulled out of it, I guess, right, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great scripted opportunity for costumes for me, like to be able to show that story between this kind of movement that was this youth movement that was culture movement that was happening East Coast, West Coast. So that was just a joy. I had an incredible team of background costumers, and we actually split. When we were doing fittings, we had a section that was the West Coast for Monterey, and we had some wonderful, wonderful research with a great film we looked at called I believe it was called Newport by Murray Lerner, which is a beautiful black and white film of Newport, and that really helped kind of anchor what we were going for. And also there's like not only, the geographical, but the climate difference. I'm from the Monterey Bay area, so I'm from Santa Cruz, so I know exactly what Monterey is like, which is the other end of the bay, and it's chillier. It's not as so the way that people are dressed, and that was really helpful to be able to tell us a geographical story as well with what was happening musically and politically, socially, and these kind of the subtle differences between the East Coast and the West Coast. It was a really, really great opportunity. I really appreciated that in the script.
Yeah, it's really cool. I guess we were talking about Bob. I mean, the way like, and I love the film obviously, and I think your costumes too. We track this incredibly a short amount of time, but we get so much obviously information and watching him really come of age as an artist and like as a person in this film. We end like him on the motorcycle, right? Like, and he has his, I think he's like he has his leather jacket on, right? And these in the movie, it's just incredible. Like, I guess like what like finding that leather, like it looks great, it's a great look, it's obviously like a classic Dylan look, I think too. Like, how did it come, like finding that jacket for him and like the right leather jacket, I guess, to have him in?
Oh, well, we made it. We made
Okay.
it. It was, and we made most of Timmy's costumes, like two-thirds, and then, peppered in some vintage pieces. But we had research on what he wore at Newport, and that scene of him on the motorcycle talking to Joan before he leaves, that's the dawn of the concert that night. So he is wearing the same
Right.
costume that he's wearing at Newport. So we made that. And also because that costume represents so much in our story. It represents his departure from being the solo folk musician with the guitar in those very earthy colors and his departure of his desire to be in a band, which is at the crux of our story of him plugging in and going electric, and the visual mirrors that desire as a young artist, and his where we leave him is really, I believe, the great rock and roll American archetype that Bob still echoes to this day. And the idea that that Bob Dylan himself, as his work as an artist was evolving, so was his persona in terms of how he wanted to be, how he presented himself to the world, from the Woody Guthrie, the humility of that everyman worker look, to this, definite departure at the end of and the journey of getting there, and the end of a young man who has a band, and he's already traveled. He's been to England, and you see those influences, and then we leave him as he sets off into the world, and as really Bob Dylan as uh you know, icon. You really think of him, at least I do, of that, like, of him on stage with the hair like backlit, and that silhouette with the Cuban heels and the guitar. And that is kind of the goalpost for the end of the movie, where the
Right.
goal, so it's very exciting to be able to tell the story through the costume, along with underscoring the amazing work that Timmy was doing.
He's so good in the movie. It's incredible. Do you, in that scene too, you have, I think Joan is wearing, or Monica as Joan is wearing a great, like, is it a raincoat right at the end, or like a vinyl, like, does she have like a vinyl coat, which I think is also from obviously I'm assuming from, like, it's from the state, right? From the concert. Like you said, it's the dawn after the concert. But I guess, like, was that another build, or did you kind of, were you able to find the replica? Like, how'd you do that, I guess, to
No,
get,
we made that.
you made
That
that
was
too.
a
Okay.
wonderful discovery for me. There are all kinds of gems when doing biographical research, and there are lots of pictures of her at Newport in this raincoat that kind of confounded me. I was kind of like, because Joan Baez dressed very modestly, almost
Hmm.
monastic, and
Yeah.
not sexualized. She had a very kind of modest style. Yet her outerwear, like you see her at Newport in 64, and she's wearing a fringe leather coat, suede coat that would predate Jimi Hendrix by 3 years. And she was wearing it over a very conservative white pleated dress. And I thought that was such a good expression of, such a great expression of her youth because she's the same age as Bob and finding this cool coat maybe on her travels. And the coat, the raincoat at the end of the film, I had seen lots of pictures of her at Newport and I was just kind of mystified by it. And then I through my process of research, not all at one time, over time, I saw that she had worn that coat a month earlier when she shot her album cover, Farewell Angelina, and Richard Avedon took that picture. So I assumed it came from Richard Avedon, the great fashion photographer, portrait photographer. So I thought maybe someone from Vogue magazine gave it to her. But then I found another photo of her in May, a month before that, in Trafalgar Square with Donovan wearing that very same coat. And I realized, because it's such a mod raincoat, and I realized it was a popular designer then, Mary Quant, who was,
Hmm.
it was very mod and it was kind of the mode of the day and very trendy, I guess you'd say, especially, and a piece probably a young woman would covet. And I was able to vet those images with friends of mine who work at the Victoria Albert Museum, the curators. Indeed, it was a Mary Quantico. So we remade it. I chose to remake it in a putty color because most of those raincoats are like red or yellow, and it was a bit too loud for that scene. But I did line the inside with mod orange. So, but yeah, that was really thrilling, just kind of unique piece of costume that I wanted to have in the film because it really expressed kind of Joan and Bob, their global notoriety, how they were international stars, and
Hmm.
that was very different from maybe generationally, like Alan Lomax or Pete Seeger or even Peter, Paul, and Mary, the way that they dressed, although Peter, Paul, and Mary were younger and they would evolve into kind of a more mod look, but at that time, it would set them apart.
Yeah, I love hearing you talk about this because it's just so it's like all this stuff is so the detail in this film is so incredible and like but also like it feels as a viewer you're not like you're just in the world. You know what I mean? I think that's a testament to your work is that it's not like
That's the
well,
goal. So
yeah, it
thank
really is just great. You're so great. Arianne Phillips, four-time Oscar nominee again this year for A Complete Unknown. Congratulations again, and thank you for chatting about the film.
thank you, Chris. So good to see you
Good
again.
seeing you.